Hello and good morning. Welcome to the Finance Town Hall. Thank you for your patience. There was a line at the door, so we wanted to make sure we gave people a few more minutes to join. It seems like we still have people coming in, but we want to be respectful of everyone's time. So we'll get started in just a moment. So a few items to note before we begin. Today's meeting is being recorded. We will post the video on demand and today's presentation on the Finance and Administration website. I will enter the URL in the chat in just a couple of moments. A live transcript has been enabled for today's session. To view the transcript or closed captions, click the live transcript icon in your Zoom window control panel, then click View Transcript to see the transcript in a separate window, or show subtitles to view closed captions. All guests have been placed on mute by the host. So if you have questions for the presenters, please submit them via the Q&A, and we will pause throughout the meeting to have the presenters answer your questions. If you would like to speak with other participants, please type your comments in the chat. And with those few items out of the way, I will now introduce Mike Gower, Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer and University Treasurer.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good morning, everyone. Glad to see 368 of you thus far, and appreciate the opportunity to catch you up on some things going on around the university. Next slide, please. Give you an idea of what we'll be seeing today. First of all, an institutional planning and operations update by Henry Velez. I'll be introducing him in a moment. Mid-year financial report by our Chief Budget Officer, David Moore. An update on the lease administration project from our controller, Ernie DeSandro, and a variety of updates from the Project Management Office, John Fahey. Then as we have opportunity, we'll take questions along the way and look forward to good discussion. Next slide. So it's my pleasure to introduce my good friend and colleague, Henry Velez. Henry is the Vice President for Institutional Planning and Operations, Business Services within IP&O. In a career spanning 28 years in higher education, Henry is a licensed professional public accounting, certified financial planner, certified facilitator in internal control, self-assessment, and a certified information technology professional. In his current position, he has fiscal oversight of housing, facilities, parking, transportation, capital planning, and construction, public safety, mail, records retention, warehousing, fleet, and various other university support services. So we're looking forward to this overview of IP&O today, and it's off to you, Henry.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, everyone. So today I'm going to go over the areas that are under the umbrella of institutional planning and operations. I'm going to touch on the services that we provide. I'm also going to share some operational facts and figures, as well as what we've been doing to prepare our buildings and campuses for repopulations. We have about 20 minutes. There's a lot to cover, but I'm going to try to leave some time at the end for questions. Certainly, if we run short on time, I'll be happy to respond in the chat function or follow up later this week through email. Can we go to the next slide, please? So institutional planning and operation is the largest business division within the university. We have over 3,300 employees. We have statewide responsibility serving all the chancellors. Our mission is to create an evolving, safe, inviting environment to advance the institutional mission. Next slide, please. There are 6 functional areas under IP&O. All of our areas report into Tony Calcato, who's our Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at the university. Our university public safety area is led by Ken Kopp. Our strategic services group is led by Jasleen Darden. Our university facility is overseen by John Shulak. Our code and standards office is led by Scott Luthman. Our planning development design group is overseen by David Schultz, and I oversee the business service areas. So One thing that we all have in common is that we come together under a common purpose. We're supporting today, envisioning tomorrow. Each one of these areas, we're going to go into a little bit more detail in the video, but in the blue boxes, I'm not going to go through all these details, but it lists out the specific areas that fall under each of our responsibilities. For the primary areas, all except business services, these areas are considered cost centers. The business services area is a combination of cost centers and responsibility centers. For our cost centers, we have developed service level agreements, which defines the services that we provide as costs in our cost pools. The service level agreements provide an overview of all our services. It lists out the responsibilities that we have as service providers. It provides contact information, including how to escalate concerns. It includes our KPIs and metrics. And it also points out what are the services that are out of scope and not covered by the cost pools. We're going to go into a short video that's going to explain a little bit more of the details of the services that we provide across the university. If we could start that video, please.
Welcome to Institutional Planning and Operations, Rutgers University's largest business division. IP&O is the backbone of the university, charged with creating a high-performing and effective operation. Our division units are many and busy. Our police force keeps our campuses safe and employs advanced technology and training to provide a secure yet open environment. Our emergency management and emergency services teams provide emergency response, emergency medical services, and safety education. Our planning, development, and design group is not only responsible for designing construction projects, but they plan for what the university will look like in the decades to come and how it will change along the way to better service our students, faculty, and staff. Our design and project management teams create continuity from campus to campus, showing respect for the past and a commitment to the future of higher education. Our facilities group builds competitive spaces for science and research, athletics, and for studying the arts. They maintain the buildings, grounds, walkways, and open spaces. Our campus buildings range from the most modern to our renowned and treasured historic buildings. We employ custodians, carpenters, plumbers, painters, and electricians, as well as accountants, interior designers, administrative assistants, engineers, architects, emergency service technicians, and many other crucial positions to keep the university running. Employee Services, in collaboration with University Human Resources, oversees the employment lifecycle from pre-hire through retirement while supporting the university and division strategic initiatives. We oversee sustainability measures including recycling, 2 solar fields, electric cars, bike-friendly environments, and wastewater management. 2 power plants distribute most of the utilities needed to run our campuses. We service fan coil units, pumps, fire extinguishers, cooling towers, and emergency safety equipment. We have over 60 miles of underground water and sewer lines, distribute 40.5 million thermal units of gas, and use over 950 million gallons of water. It's like running a small city. Our Environmental Health and Safety Unit provides comprehensive and professional health, safety, and environmental services to the entire university community, including environmental protection and stewardship, hazardous materials management, and laboratory, research, clinical, and workplace safety. Our transportation and parking group provides bus service, parking permits, bicycle accommodations and rentals, and special event parking. We provide business support service such as mail, records management, material services, surplus removal, and housing operations. We manage our own retail operations, such as the 3-screen first-run movie theater, the Rutgers Cinema, and we even run the Rutgers Golf Course. Get the picture? There's not much that can happen at Rutgers University without institutional planning and operations. Supporting today, envisioning tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. If we can move to the next slide. So if you want to learn more about us, you can visit our website. There's a lot of material on our website that further goes into the services we provide. I also wanted to point out that our service level agreements can be found on our website. So I encourage you to visit these sites, please. Can we go to the next slide? We'll get into some of our facts and figures. These are just some very high level numbers. And I'm not going to get into each one of these lines, but I'll give you a high level overview. So our mail service area provides services to all our students, faculty, and staff across the university. Typically on an annual basis pre-pandemic, we were distributing about 4.7 million pieces of mail and packages across the university. Most of these packages are really our Amazon packages that students are ordering while they're here. Our records management group oversees an off-campus facility that is temperature control, and this is where we secure many of the university records. Currently, we have over 165,000 banker-sized boxes in our storage facility. It's a state-of-the-art facility that we can easily catalog and locate the records that any university department that is storing with us, we can locate for them within a couple of hours. Our building maintenance area, overseen by facilities, they manage 979 buildings. That's a total of 30 million gross square feet on 6,000 acres. Our current replacement value for these properties is over 29.5 billion. Our current deferred maintenance liability is over 4.8 billion. And we have a presence in all 21 counties. If we were to take all the university properties and combine them together, we probably would be somewhere between the 6th and 7th largest city in the state. Our transportation area runs one of the largest bus operations in the state as well. We have in a typical year pre-pandemic, we had over 10.3 million riders per year. We go to the next slide. Our university police department is a full-fledged police group, and they respond to over 1 million emergency and non-emergency calls or inquiries per year. They also are charged with providing the training for protection of minors across the university. The emergency service area responds to over 50,000 calls per year. And our identity access management is responsible for managing over 5,000 card access readers throughout the university, and in a typical year, distribute over 35,000 new card IDs. We can go to the next slide, please. For our cost centers, these are the ones that are tied to service level agreements. Our current year FY21 budget is at $195.8 million. That's down by 22.1 million from where we were pre-pandemic. Next slide. For the responsibility centers, these are the ones that fall under institutional planning and operations. They are parking, the retail and bookstore, the student center, recreational centers, O&M, our golf course, and housing, which is our largest responsibility center. For FY21, our current budget is at 72.7 million, and that's down by 120.8 million from where we were pre-pandemic. This is primarily the result of most students being remote, as well as our faculty and staff. Next slide, please. I'm going to get into a little bit of what we've been doing supporting the university and preparing our buildings and our campuses. One of our primary focuses has been around communicating with our community. There is a Return to Rutgers document, a guidebook that's been published. It was put together by the COVID-19 task force, and it has input from hundreds of members from across the university. It's an important document. It details the plans of how we are looking to repopulate the university in the months to come. It also has provided a lot of guidance during the last 6 to 7 months as well. We also have developed and published and put out our public service announcement videos. They basically communicate the efforts we've been doing to maintain the university community safe during the pandemic. We put in a lot of measures into place to protecting our people, including have developed and have our staff going through training and other members across the university also going through the training. We've procured and we've distributed over 250,000 cloth face masks. They have been distributed to our students, our faculty, and our staff who have been on campus. We've worked very closely with our vendors to ensure we have a steady supply chain. We've kept appropriate levels of our personal protection equipment in our warehouse and storage so we can draw from it as needed. We've developed a screening app called My Campus Pass, and that can be located on the My Rutgers portal. Basically, you're required to complete this pass every time you're coming onto campus as an employee. It asks you to select the buildings you will be at during the particular day. And it also has a self-screening questionnaire so that you can disclose whether you are experiencing any COVID-19 symptoms. We've also put together an online COVID observation reporting form through our public safety area. It gives the university community an opportunity and a mechanism to report any kind of observations or concerns that they have related to COVID. We'll go to the next slide, please. We've put a lot of practice in place to control the population on campus, including we've prohibited casual visitors from coming on campus. We've restricted face-to-face meetings. We've put a pause on all university on-campus events. We've restricted access to our buildings by ensuring that all buildings are locked and you must access them through your ID cards. We've also developed a visitor lock so that departments could use in case they are having visitors to their locations. They can track who they are and also provide their contact information should we ever need to reach out to them. We've done a lot of things to enforce social distancing. We want to make sure everybody is following a good practice here. And a lot of it has focused around just keeping the occupancy levels across the universities down. We can move to the next slide. We've also provided assistance across the university, regardless if it's in an office building, an academic setting, or research facilities, in the libraries and computer labs. We provided support to them to come up with the appropriate occupancy calculations to ensure that we're following the executive orders coming from the state. We've developed a good signage package, and we've deployed these signage packages across the university. At each entryway of our buildings, we've put It's Up to Us sign that basically reminds everyone that a face cover is required to maintain appropriate distance and to sanitize our hands. We've included circulation markers throughout our buildings, including our stairs and elevators. Where appropriate, we've also have developed signage that reminds people about limits in occupancy. And we've designated specific doors for exit only and other doors for entry only. Next slide. We've increased our sanitation efforts. We've included hand sanitizer stations in all common areas. We've increased our cleaning frequencies in high touch and common spaces. We've revised our cleaning schedules and methods to making sure that we have appropriate protocols in place. We've also included disinfectant wipes in all our fleet vehicles. Our building operation and maintenance systems has been one of our biggest efforts. We've had many of our buildings have been really shuttered since mid-March. However, many other buildings have remained open throughout the pandemic. And regardless of whether the buildings have remained active or have been shuttered, we still have a responsibility to go through each building and ensure that preventive maintenance is occurring. We have to make sure that the plumbing systems are flushed. We inspect our HVAC systems, control systems to make sure they're operating properly. We have done filter upgrades where appropriate. We've looked for opportunities to increase outside air circulation where appropriate as well. And we've also done checks to ensure no high density spaces are in use. Next slide. IPNO developed a group called FAST. The team was formed basically to assist university units to assess their work areas to ensure that they were meeting the Return to Rutgers guidelines. We've worked very closely with university procurement. We've partnered very well over the last several months, and we've come up with mechanisms to ensure that any department across the university who needs to order, in particular, PPE supplies or other type of materials, that they can do so directly from our warehouse. And our warehouse portal is accessed through the marketplace portal. We've done a ton of coordination, primarily with the Governor's Office, Office of Secretary of Higher Education, as well as the Department of Health. Next slide. Now we'll get into a very high level timeline. Now, I just want to let everybody know this is very fluid, and this can change at any point in time. It's depending on how things continue to develop throughout the state and also on our campus. But in December, we began to socialize the vaccine message. January through March, our primary focus has been on developing the repopulation plans across the university. That includes an academic plan for September. April through June is where we're starting to think we can start doing some additional soft repopulation, somewhere between 10 to 25%, depending on the state guidelines. July and August, our hope is that we can start seeing more of a full repopulation. Now, with that, I just want to put a caveat. Full repopulation doesn't necessarily mean that we're all going to be back at the same time. There are going to be strategies put into place regarding shifts, rotations, And we want to make sure that we're not overpopulating any specific area, especially where we may think they are restricted areas where you don't have too much space to ensure social distancing. So we're going to be careful with that. During the month of September is where we're hoping to be as close as possible to back to normal operations. We will see a big increase in our face-to-face instructions. We're going to see much more social events going on, higher occupancies in our residence halls. Our dining operations across the university should start seeing, increase in their operational hours and services. And certainly we hope to have much more events and athletic type of venues occurring as well. Again, all this is subject to change. It depends how things are going. Just in the past week already, there's new changes in the executive orders regarding athletic events. So it's a very fluid timeline, but it's where we are today. Next slide. I wanted to leave you with these resources here. These are important links that I hope everybody has time to go to. The Return to Rutgers Guidebook. We've also developed a quick reference guides that unit heads can basically use to plan for repopulating their spaces. It gives you a nice checklist of some high-level things you can keep in mind. It gives you tips on how to calculate occupancy, how to plan for your spaces, and even how to consider building your schedules for your staff. And certainly for the latest information, we want you to always be going to the University COVID-19 website. Next slide. Throughout this whole pandemic, institutional planning has been involved in well over 100 initiatives across the university in supporting the university operations and ensuring that we're maintaining the campuses safe. We developed a short booklet that talks about all the initiatives we've been involved with. You'll have access to this as part of this presentation that will be posted. But our primary focus, again, has been around safety and training, communications, the campus repopulations. We serve on dozens of committees, and we've also been ensuring that the operations are maintained at appropriate levels. Next slide, please. I want to just take an opportunity here to acknowledge the members of IPNO. Hats off to our members that have been maintaining our university safe and operationally sound. These areas include environmental health and safety, our police, our security guards, and our first responders. Maintaining our buildings have been our custodians, our maintenance mechanics, our grounds and utility groups. And also a lot of gratitude to our mail, warehousing fleet, our other logistical operations, as well as our bus transportation group. These members have remained working on campus throughout the pandemic, and we owe them a world of thanks for all their dedicated work. Next slide. So I'm going to leave you with this. Just want to remind everyone, we're all in this together. Let's make sure we're ensuring that everyone is wearing their face covering, we're watching our distance, and we're washing our hands. And with that, Stephanie, do we have time for any questions, Q&A?
Yes, we do. If you would just bear with me for 1 second. We have several questions that have come in. Again, if you have a question for Henry, feel free to include it in the Q&A. I've organized the questions so that I can potentially ask similar questions together. The first question that came in is, how do we receive our provided face coverings, as we have not received any as of yet?
Okay, so we had worked with each of the chancellors had designated a liaison for their particular areas. And then our warehousing operation group and our logistical group worked with them to distribute the face coverings that they needed. So I would encourage you to, reach out to your area head, and then there are specific liaisons that you can reach out to the chancellor's office. But certainly, if there's a particular area, you could email myself, or you can email Frank Scalise. I can provide the email contact later on, and we will be happy to look into that. But we started doing the distribution in late August, about 5 face coverings per member.
All right, the next 2 questions are related to the My Campus app. Are there requirements such as the My Campus Pass for vendors who come into campus buildings? And how do we know that the My Campus Pass is enforced to ensure that employees are on campus are completing it?
That's a good question. So regarding our vendors, so the vendors do not have to complete it because they're not employees of the university and do not have access through the My Rutgers portal. However, within institutional planning and operations, we have worked closely with all our vendors to ensure that they're following proper protocols. We've worked closely with them to understand what their own protocols are. Again, most of this revolves around executive orders from the state, so everyone is required to do them. Other areas around the university, quite frankly, it's really up to every department to make sure they're working with their vendors to ensure those protocols are being followed. And also, that's where this COVID-19 observation forum comes into place, where people have an opportunity. If you're seeing someone not wearing a face covering, if you're seeing someone who's not maintaining social distance or other type of concerns, you do have an opportunity to report it through that. And we do follow up. Our public safety group does follow up with that piece.
Great, thank you. The next set of questions are about the physical space in the building. Have barriers, i.e. transparent partitions between cubicles and high density areas, been considered as part of the repopulation strategy?
Yes, so we do have that. We're within IPNO, we're not making that requirement, but it is available. It is part of the return to Rutgers guidance. We do have these plexiglass barriers in our warehouse. We've already had many departments reach out to us, and we do set them up at their request. So it is a practice that we could easily implement. We have plenty of stock in the warehouse right now. Every area has to kind of assess their particular spaces. However, again, this is where our FAST group comes into place. If you visit our facilities, our IPNO website, our facilities website, or our planning, development, design websites, there is a link where you can, contact our FAST group, and we can easily send a staff member out to help the department head assess their areas, what's needed.
Great. I think we have time for 2 or 3 more questions. It is not clear how the 50% occupancy, will be counted. Can you speak about that and how transient students count compared to staff who are expected to be in the building full-time all week?
I'm sorry, Stephanie, can you repeat that? It broke up a little bit on me at the beginning part.
It's not clear how 50% occupancy will be counted. Can you speak more about that and how the transient students count compared to staff who are expected to be there full-time all week?
Yeah, so we do have some guidelines. And again, if you visit the link that I provided on the quick guide for calculating your occupancies, they will give some guidelines there. But again, our FAST group will be able to provide assistance there. What I'll do is I'm going to provide the email link there where people can reach out. But that occupancy level is very fluid, right? It keeps changing on us depending on what the executive orders are saying to us. But there is a way to calculate that, and we have to just be very mindful. As I think part of the question was about transient, whether it's staff or students, faculty who are coming on. All that we need to kind of be conscious of that and how that impacts the amount of people on campus. And that's where, again, the point about once we start repopulating and as our numbers start to go up, that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to be back at the specific same times. And we're going to have to look at mechanisms. How do we rotate staff? How do we create shifts so that we're not over-densifying any particular area?
So you've answered some of the questions that are outstanding. The next 2 questions I'm going to bring together. Is the vaccine or regular testing going to be a requirement for returning to campus? And for non-essential workers who currently are working remote, will they be required to vaccinate before returning to campus?
So I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna tell you what I've been hearing, but that's not necessarily the area that I'm that close with. But the message I've been hearing is that as of now, the vaccine is not going to be mandated, right, for you to return to campus. The testing, as of now, if you are on campus at least 1 day per week, that testing is required. But again, that can change on us. But I can have someone from really our RVHS area that's overseeing the vaccine plan and messaging around that, provide some more information there.
Are you shipping items from the IPO warehouse to off-campus locations?
So that's a good question. So it depends, right? So if somebody, and when you're talking about offsite locations, if it is a university property, we will work with that group. We do have couriers that go throughout the state. If it makes sense for us to ship something from our central warehouse to their locations, we are gladly to do that. Quite frankly, there are times where it's better for them to pick up some of their items locally, if that makes sense, but we work with them. We are not shipping anything from our warehouse to people's homes, though.
Thank you. The last question that I'll ask is a bit long, but the question is, are employees expected to purchase a parking permit even though we only go to campus occasionally? It appears that the parking rules are still in effect during approved term telecommuting period. And so we're looking for, there was a person who received a parking ticket and is waiting for a resolution to an appeal. But I think ultimately the question is, are employees expected to purchase a parking permit during this time where we're telecommuting?
Sure. So let me answer that in two sections. So through December, if we go back when the pandemic first hit us and we started to be more remote from mid-March through December, your permit at that point in time was already procured, and it's an annual permit, and it doesn't require, so that annual permit is not based on how many times you come onto campus, how many times you use a parking space. It's basically based on bargaining agreements that we have throughout the university. And it just gives you a privilege of being able to park on campus, whether you use it every day of the week, 12 months of the year, whether you only use it one day a month for the 12 months, the price doesn't change. So during that period of time, there were no refunds provided because it's an annual permit. We have paused the FY21 permit registration. We are looking at a few things. So we've not started that permit process for the calendar year 21. It's important to know that our parking permits are not fiscal year based, they're calendar year based. We're not sure when we're going to activate that yet, but we are looking at options. But during this period of time that we haven't activated for 21, we're basically telling people, if you had an active permit that you paid for in calendar year 20, that is still active for this time period in 21, and you're not getting any citations. Now, if you never purchased a permit before and you're now coming onto campus, you have to be buying a permit, even if it's a daily permit that you need to purchase.
Great, thank you, Henry. We have one final question, and I will ask maybe, I don't know if you or Mike can answer this. What is the guidance anticipated for in-person program delivery in our communities after March 31st?
I'm sorry, can you say that again, Stephanie?
Sure. What is the guidance anticipated for in-person program delivery in our communities after March 31st?
Okay, so that is all being worked on right now. We don't have final decisions on that. That's going to be, through the senior leadership at the university. The plans for this coming summer are being looked at, as well as the fall. So as of right now, like I mentioned, there is a pause on on-campus events. There's also, again, we're looking at what type of events can occur in the summer, kind of conferences or other things. So that's currently being worked on.
I'll add to that summer session is intended to be remote. Again, the actual academic summer sessions. But as Henry noted, the other hundreds and hundreds of activities that typically happen during the summer, those are being assessed and for safety and appropriateness. Henry, I want to thank you for joining us today. There are a number of questions that we might not have gotten to. I think, as is typically what we do here, we'll collect them, work with you with answers, and post them to the site where the recording is. But very much appreciate you going through this and helping the community to understand just how IP&O is everywhere and what it does and kind of the scale of it. I think that's important to understand. So
No,
thanks.
thank you for having me, Mike. I
Really
appreciate it.
happy to have you here. We're going to take a short break, very short break, just everyone get a chance to stretch before we go into the next part of the program. I believe we have a poll put up. Be very short break. All right, welcome back. I hope you had a chance to update your beverage and stretch your legs. Want to go into the next part of the program. It's my pleasure to introduce David Moore, the university's Associate VP and Chief Budget Officer. For that, just hold on a moment, David. Let's put up the poll results. So 53% of you got that right. Occupational health is actually a part of University Finance Administration, interestingly enough. And we're very pleased to have them as part of our operation. Appreciate the feelings about comfort level. As you see there, about 23% very comfortable, 42% somewhat comfortable. And then certainly in this day and age, it's reasonable that there is some discomfort with that. We hope as the planning proceeds that number will diminish, and which is not part of the 3 Ws. Well, for these purposes, certainly watering your plants or wishing upon a star, but those are good for other things. Now I'd like to turn it over to David, who's going to give us a brief overview of our financial performance of the university through 6 months. David.
Thank you, Mike, and good morning, everyone. Today we will review our revenue and expense actuals for the month of December as it compares to the approved budget for FY 2021. Next slide, please. When we compare the December actuals to the budget, we are looking for how much we have collected in revenues or have expensed as it compares to the annual budget. In addition, we analyze if this is consistent with the prior year experiences for both revenues and expense. In this first chart for revenues, we start out with tuition fees found on the first line. Through December, we have collected approximately 52% of the approved budget. And when compared to the previous years, to see that there is consistency. With all things remaining equal with prior years, we feel that this budget is aligned with what we could achieve by year end. The next category is the federal and state student aid. There's some variation in this category as related to our federal student aid funds and is impacted by having less students on campus and operating in a remote environment that results in less opportunity for federal work study. This difference is only temporary and will be seen as we'll see an equal offset in our expense side. The following category is our federal appropriations. This is still an important category, but a smaller line item when you look at the rest of the overall revenue components. And this variance, when compared to prior years, is more associated with timing and receipt of reimbursement. We feel that by year end, this amount approved in the budget will be achieved. Next 7 categories, starting with the state appropriations, state paid fringe, grant and contracts, facilities and administrative recoveries, which is associated with our grant and contracts, gifts and contributions, as well as endowment and investment income, are all on track with the budget or slightly above our prior year experiences. One specific category that is above prior year experience is the grants and contracts. This specific category has experienced an increase due to receipt of the coronavirus relief funds from the state of New Jersey. This is one-time specific funding that was scheduled to end, and the revenues are received by the end of December, which is why we see this variance when we're just looking at the first 6 months. Our other research-sponsored contracts and grants remain very stable, and we actually have a slight increase at this particular time in the year. As we go down and start to look at line 11, at healthcare revenues, which shows a positive increase over prior years, which is particularly due to the receipt of some CARES Act funding and increase in volume from the pent-up demand on results of, as a result of the shutdown for some medical procedures. Further, an accounting change between healthcare revenues and affiliated and house staff revenues will be experienced and is part of the results, and will result in a positive variance to the healthcare revenues and an equal negative or offsetting variance to the affiliated revenues. The next category is the affiliated and house staff revenues that has seen some delays in the first 6 months in receivables. However, once we start looking at January preliminary data, you start to see that this category starts to see some of those receivables come in, and we do feel that we will receive and achieve this budget by the end of the fiscal year. Other resources of revenues accounts for items such as self-supporting type activities that have a fee for service and other activities like patents and royalties. This category has been impacted by the pandemic and is behind prior year revenue experiences due to higher receivables when compared to the prior years. Actuals, again, as of looking at January preliminary data, has shown that the receivables is more on track, and this line item is back on track to meet the overall budget as established. The last category is our auxiliary revenues. And the auxiliary revenues consist primarily of housing, dining, parking, and athletic revenues. This category is behind prior year experiences due to less students choosing to live on campus and purchasing meal plans and parking permits. When developing the FY 2021 budget, the housing occupancy in the fall was budgeted at 25%. When we took the census of those choosing to live on campus, occupancy level was approximately 9%. In addition, contributing to the difference, as we see in the first 6 months, is the delay in receipt of athletics conference Big Ten revenues. Now, again, in January information, we can already see that those are back on track, and it was really more of a timing for the athletic conference Big Ten. But this revenue subcategory has started to see, again, the receipt in January, and will continue through the remaining of the fiscal years or fiscal year months. The auxiliary revenues will continue to be challenged with the reduced amount of students that will be living on campus as we move into the spring term. This has a direct impact on the number, again, as the students are not here, are not purchasing meal plans, and are not purchasing parking permits, which equates to the lower revenue amount that will continue throughout the year. Overall, total revenue through December shows that when we compare to budget, we are at approximately 50.4% and on track to achieve the total approved revenue budget. Next slide, please. For our expense categories, total compensation, which includes both salary and fringe benefits, is slightly below the most recent prior year and consistent with the average of the prior 3-year experiences. The non-personnel expense categories that include supply and other, scholarships and fellowships, travel, plant operation and maintenance, other operating expenses, and professional services are all trending below prior year experience. Much of this change is due to Rutgers' overall efforts to contain and reduce discretionary spending, travel expenses, and halting new capital planning and associated spending, which all help the university's financial performance. Total expenses is currently tracking at approximately 48% in the first 6 months, which continues to help the overall bottom line impact, and is due to the great leadership and financial stewardships of units across our great university. With this overall kind of view of both the revenue and expense for the first 6 months as compared to the annual budget, this will conclude kind of our review of our report, and I'd be happy to take any questions that may be out there. Stephanie.
Great. Just give me 1 second. So there are 2 questions.
Thank you.
One question is, for grants and contracts, what is the percentage without the additional funding received from the state funding?
So when you normalize it by taking it out, we're actually right on track with roughly just slightly over a 50%. So we did kind of look at that to see how it impacts. So again, as we go over the next 6 months, as we continue throughout the fiscal year, that will kind of normalize itself out. That's what we're anticipating.
Thank you. Second question is, do salaries and wages include furloughs?
Salary and wages does include some furloughs that we're taking within the first 6 months. The budget, though, includes the furlough amounts as budgeted by the university. So yes, it's true that there is furloughs associated.
The next question is, how much is Rutgers expected to save based on the furloughs currently in force, counting salary and fringe, et cetera? What additional furloughs are expected, and how much will Rutgers save on those?
So overall savings from furloughs total is in the neighborhood of about 45 million, and that is with fringe. Now, we have the associated state-based fringe that's offset, and that's what's being anticipated for that saving for the furloughs.
I should note for the record here that furloughs are not in place for all workers, and there's active negotiations going on with certain bargaining units relative to that.
2 additional questions just came in. One refers to the negotiations with URA AFT, and another about questions, additional furloughs in the upcoming fiscal year.
We're not in a position to talk about active negotiations. Apologize for that, but that's what we have to do. And what was the other question, Stephanie?
Will there be any furloughs in the upcoming fiscal year?
If you're referring to fiscal 22, at this point, we do not anticipate that as part of the budget process we're going through. However, we are right in the middle of the budget process, so I won't say anything definitively. And as I clearly learned from experience with this year, everything that goes on with the virus and impact on the university is very fluid. So right now we're not planning for that, but I'll never say never, given that been wrong in prognostications before, but it's not part of the budget planning at the moment.
And then the final question, why are other operating expenses higher as a percentage?
There is some, again, this is kind of percentage as a budget. So there are some items that, again, in the planning of the annual budget, might be categorized more in the other operating. So we do see some savings in other categories, but also some areas that are in other operating expense being purchased. But really what we're seeing is that's really related more toward the needs of expenses for the pandemic, related to the pandemic.
That was the last question. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, everyone.
So we can advance to the next slide and welcome Ernie DeSandro, Associate Vice President and University Controller.
Thanks, Stephanie. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to provide you with an update on the lease administration project, which is also referred to as GASB 87. My colleague John Fahey and I will partner together to provide you some of the project information. I'm going to discuss most of the accounting and overall impact to you and the Rutgers as a whole. And John will inform you on the progress we've made and the next steps. So let's turn to the next slide and review specifically the topics I'm going to cover. Let me first start by providing you some high-level context and level setting as to what GASB is, and specifically what GASB 87 is. GASB is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. It's an independent organization that establishes financial accounting and reporting standards for state and local governments. The purpose of these standards is to promote financial reporting that provides useful information to our taxpayers, public officials, and investors. As a state institution, Rutgers must follow these standards. GASB Statement Number 87 for leases, or simply GASB 87, is a new standard that establishes a single approach to accounting for and reporting leases. At a high level, the new standard introduces a model that will now require most leases to be reflected on the balance sheet. And basically, this statement establishes a principle that leases are really financings of the right to use an underlying asset. Therefore, a lessee is required to recognize a liability on the balance sheet, and a lessor is required to recognize a receivable on the balance sheet. In simple terms, if you have a copier lease that is for 5 years, today we only record the lease expense each month. Under the new standard, we will be required to record the total amount of the entire 5 years of payments as a liability. Similarly, if we are renting out space, today we record the rent that we charge our tenants each month, but in the future, we will also have to record the value of all of the rent as an asset on our books. These are very simple examples, but there are also extensive qualitative and quantitative disclosures that are required, which we won't bore you with today, but trust that they will be handled centrally. The GASB 87 compliance date is July 1st of 2021. Now, as you can imagine, most of the work for this standard will be performed behind the scenes, but there will most likely be an impact to everyone who engages in these activities across the university. From a scope perspective, Rutgers has a very large lease portfolio. We have about 800 equipment and real estate leases that will be loaded into our new lease management system, which John will speak to shortly. And we have over 2,500 assets. While the primary focus of the new system will be compliance with the new standard, we may need to capture new data in order for us to get the accounting right. As a result, the buying process may change slightly. And to that end, we have expanded the project scope and approach to take the opportunity to identify potential enhancements for the university's equipment and real estate lease management program. This includes items like providing guidance on annual capital spend allocations, or analysis as to whether to lease or buy an asset, and bringing uniformity to the current process to ensure that all leases are collaboratively managed across the university. We will be working with the chancellors and the central business office to help build out that framework. As I have previously mentioned, we will be implementing a new lease management solution and enhanced processes. I will now turn over the presentation to John Fahey, who's going to provide an update on a few key projects, including the new lease administration system. John?
Thank you very much, Ernie. Good morning, everyone. Before I get into the updates, I'd like to take a quick moment. We do have a poll question we'd like to pull up. Kat, if we could please get that up. So before I get into my update, I want to ask, do you know where to go for appropriate levels of information on current and future projects? If you could all just take a quick second and answer that, we will pause just for a quick 30 seconds so we can see where we are. Okay. Thank you all very much for those of you who responded. So it looks like 51% of you say no, you do not know where to go for information. Thank you very much for your responses. Hopefully I'm going to cover some of that for you right now. And we will certainly address that as soon as we get offline here from this meeting. So without further ado, let me jump in. I will continue with the lease administration. We'll go to that first. So we go to the next slide, please. So the lease administration project actually began over a year ago. We formulated a project team, as you can see, with multiple partners and constituents across the affected areas. We've gone through lease identifications. Ernie just mentioned some of the numbers and the volume of leases we're looking at. We went through identification. We did go through a system selection process. We've chosen a system called Lease Accelerator, an easy lease solution in partnership. That was after a full RFP process. We looked at all the available tools on the market that can handle the complexity and size of Rutgers. This was the best option for the university. We are in progress right now of data abstraction. Again, as Ernie said, we have several thousand leases that need to be loaded into the new system. So we're going through the abstraction process because they're in multiple disparate systems right now. So we're pulling all that data together and getting it ready for conversion in the new system. We're looking at procedures. We're looking at standard operating procedures. We're looking at business processes. We're working with the teams to see if adjustments need to be made. We will be releasing training and any updated information as we go through. We are in implementation right now. We've completed our design workshops. We are in validation mode now, doing our configurations and setting up our integrations. We'll begin testing, and I'll talk about that on the timeline on the next slide. And we're also into our change management execution plan as well. If we go to the next slide, please. So I'm going to start. I just kind of told you everything we've already done to this point. You can see we started back in November of 20 with the actual implementation. So right now where we are is we are getting ready to complete the validation and the accounting and configurations. We will begin user acceptance testing in the beginning of March. And you can see that will run through the middle of April. Our go live there, you will see it is an extended bar. It is not one specific date. April 30th is the date where we will turn the new system on. We will go live with our new lease management system on April 30th. You will see, however, that there are 4 weeks prior to that and 4 weeks after noted in green. That is to complete final user acceptance testing. And then the green boxes you see for the whole month of May is for hypercare and support and additional training once the system goes live. This is all to make sure, as Ernie mentioned, the effective date for the new GASE standards is July 1st. So we want to get this system up and running for at least a couple months to get everybody used to it. So that way, July 1st, we can raise our hand as Rutgers University and say, we are officially compliant and all of our users across the university are in this new system and we're good to go. So the integration work is also in process now, and that will continue through the testing period of April. Okay, so April 30th, we will have our new lease administration system online and live. And as Ernie said, we have expanded the scope to be not just leases that are GASB requirement, but all leases across the university. So Many of you may have been involved in the project already. We will continue outreach. As Ernie said, there may be some impact to anyone at the university who deals with leases in any way. If you've not been contacted yet, we are still assessing that community. We will be reaching out to folks who need to understand any new processes or have to attend any trainings. We'll be releasing those in the next month or so. And that is also what that 4-week period in April is for, to ensure we get a hold of everyone who will need to access this new system, make sure you get the proper training and understand what you need to do. Okay, so that's our lease system. Next slide, please. So just to recap, our change management is going on. Our activities, we communicate with financial leadership. We've done training for the project team. So they heavy users on the back end, as Ernie said, lots of this will be back end processes in Central. We've begun working with them already in the new system to understand from that processing standpoint how it works. For communications to community leadership will continue. Our change management plan, and this is working with chancellor-led and central units, going through evaluating, as I just said, the end user impacts, making sure everyone is communicated with and receives the information they need. And then we'll continue reporting post the launch for any additional enhancements or additional trainings we need to go through. Next slide, please. I'm going to switch gears here. That's our lease administration. The PMO office has many projects and initiatives underway, as I'm sure you're all well aware. I'm only going to focus on 2 of our key projects today. We will continue in these town halls to give you specific updates on key projects, but rather than try to update you on 20 projects at a time, what we're going to try to do to deliver more efficient information is select several projects for each of the meetings. So today we're going to talk about our HCM, Human Capital Management Project, and I'm also going to talk about our Chart of Accounts project. So I'll begin with HCM. This is a project we've been speaking about for several years now. So actually all the way back to the merger when we went to PeopleSoft. We will be moving to the Oracle HCM. The team has been in pre-planning for some time now, for several months, looking at some key areas, which I'll talk about in a moment. But what we've decided is rather than move directly into a new system implementation, we are going to take a step and we're going to do a BPR. We're going to do a business process review, working very closely with our partners and colleagues in human resources and payroll. We're going to go through a process review to look at people, to look at processes, and to look at technology, and really understand and make sure our internal processes from an operational perspective, as opposed to a system perspective, are efficient and streamlined and simple, and see if there's anything that we need to do in advance of moving to a new system. Next slide, please. So where are we now? The preliminary discovery and assessment I just mentioned, we've been in that mode for about 6 to 9 months now. We started that back in the summer. What we were really doing was engaging with some key stakeholders across the impacted units and human resources and payroll, as well as many of the units and schools and larger business units within the university. What we're doing is doing current state analysis. We're looking at the way things operate today. And again, that's leading us into our BPR phase that we're entering into right now. But looking at the current state of the way things work today, from time and labor to effort certification, position management, absence management, faculty information, performance management, recruiting, and onboarding. That's just a small list of the areas that we will get into. But those 7 items right there have been our key focus for the last several months to understand how the operations are working today. Next box, please. So that leads us to our BPR. We will be evaluating all of our processes to standard and simplify the existing processes and look for ways to improve value and timeliness of activities. So we're hoping to standardize processes, provide some more operational efficiencies, looking for service quality improvements, and putting in measures in place for risk mitigation and issue resolutions. That will be the focus of our business process design phase. We are just now in planning with our executive partners. We've not defined a timeline on how this loan will be yet, but we will release that shortly. Once the BPR is done, we'll move to our next phase. Next box, please. And that will put us into our implementation. So once we get through the BPR, we will look at implementing our cloud solution, which will be an Oracle-based platform. based on the newly standardized processes that are developed during the BPR. We'll go through a full design, we'll go through configurations, we'll go through testing, and then finally deployment. Again, final timelines have not been established or confirmed for the project yet. We are in planning discussions right now to identify those. Once they are ready, we will release them on our website and get that information out to you. We are, I will say at this point, anticipating this to be a 2+ year project to get through everything we need to do to make sure that we have a fully tested and efficient system to roll out for everyone. Okay, so we will be sharing more information as it becomes available, and I'll talk to you about a couple of the websites and other ways you can get information in just a few minutes. Next slide, please. So what's our next steps? As I just talked about with the planning with our executive teams and our key business partners, we're getting alignment on what the next steps for the business process review are and identifying the key areas of focus for the team so we can kick off the formal process. We'll be conducting that business process design, then we'll move into implementation with a full future state kickoff meeting for design phases. Okay, that's the update on our HCM project. Next slide, please. What I want to talk about now is our chart of accounts project. This is chart of accounts phase 2. Many of you were involved and engaged and collaborated with us in phase 1, which was back in 2019 and 2020, where we did a lot of optimization in the current chart of accounts. Based on a lot of the feedback and the results of that, yes, we were able to greatly improve the way things operated within our current structure of the chart of accounts, but we were able to identify, based with your help and your feedback, some areas of potential improvement and enhancement with the chart. So the chart of accounts phase 2 project, we are actually going to be making some changes to the chart of accounts. This again will be a 2+ year project we anticipate. We are just getting started. So what I want to do is talk to you a little bit about why we're doing this, talk to you about the vision of the project. So first is we're going to make it very simple. We want to make it efficient and we want to make it enduring. So why we're doing it, we want to reduce the complexity even further. We want to optimize the university community's experience. We want to eliminate some of the unnecessary cross-validation rules. We're looking at ways to eliminate duplication and help with data entry errors. We really want to improve on the previous enhancements. As I just mentioned from phase 1, we did a lot of great work there, but there's more we can do. And really what we're doing with all these new systems coming online and becoming more and more of one Rutgers and getting everything together in one place, we want to prepare the university for the future. And looking at the chart, we felt there were some things we could do. Next box, please. So what benefits will be gained by this process? Again, this will be a long, extensive process, and we will be engaging many, many people across the university to work with us. But the idea is to streamline
So it looks like we may have lost John's connection. Just bear with us for one moment.
Stephanie, while we're waiting to get John back, I see there are a couple questions that I could take on for John. One of them is, in doing BPR, are you talking to people in the field who, for example, actually input absence records, request positions, et cetera? Or is this just BPR of the work of the central units? It's absolutely.
I'm back, Mike.
Okay, well, let me finish my sentence. Or you can finish for me. It's absolutely going to involve people in the field. It has to take into account all of the processes from beginning to end. throughout for the actions that go on for HR payroll. So that one is definitely going to be the case. Now, turn it back to you, John.
Thank you very much. Melissa, can you take me to the next box, please? So how are we going to do this? Again, collaboration, same thing as Mike just mentioned about the HCM and the BPR. Same thing with the chart of accounts. These are hugely impactful initiatives and efforts. We will be collaborating. We've already started gathering working groups and focus groups from across all chancellor units and central administration. We'll be refining, validating mappings, reconciling data. Some of these processes have already begun. Socializing, we'll be opening up lines of communication, feedback, providing updates, and looking for leadership in local areas for information exchange. Lots of these things are being put in place now. We do have a website dedicated to this project I'm going to talk about in just a moment. So we continue to pull all of our constituents together. This will be a very, very massive collaboration effort. We really need everyone to work with us. We need this to be done in partnership. Just like all of our projects, we want to do this with you, not to you. So we're really going to be looking for your input, your involvement, and your engagement to partner with myself and Ernie and David, who are the sponsors for the project, to work with us through this effort. Next box, please. So when are we doing it? We kicked off planning in the fall, engaging our internal financial community to validate the proposed design. We are now conducting what we call conference room pilots. And basically what that is we're meeting with the financial and business units across the university to go over the proposed designs and discuss the changes in detail and really start looking at the data impacts and how this changes the way things will operate moving forward. We plan right now in the fall of this year, that's tentative based on how these design workshops go over the next several months, to begin some pre-deployment testing. That July 22 target for implementation, I will say that's extremely aggressive. And I would expect that to push back a little bit because we want to take our time and do this right. This is not about doing it quick. This is about establishing an enduring platform for the university. Therefore, we're going to take as much time as we need to get this set up properly. So those timelines are slightly aggressive right now. As they are modified and confirmed when we go through design, we will release new information and any updates, but those are just targets for right now. Next slide, please. So what are we doing? The current chart of account structure, the 10 segments, you can see what's there now. What we're really doing is we are repurposing 4 of the segments. So what is currently division will become department. What is currently organization will become program. Location segment, once we make the changes in department and program, we don't believe that will be required anymore. So we will take that off and reserve that for future use for further enhancements that may come about down the line. Our business line will become an expense class category, and activity will become initiative. So these are the proposed changes we're working through the business units and functional areas with now to better identify and understand what these changes mean and what the true impacts are, and further identify and categorize the value sets and how these changes will be used in the future. Next slide, please. So where are we now? We've created our project team. We've established our governance teams. Our governance teams and processes are all set up. Our chart of accounts design and prototype, we do have this set up in what's called EDMCS, which is a enterprise data management cloud service tool that we provisioned and implemented last year. This is a tool that we'll be working with all the business and financial users across university to help with the mapping. This is also where we can set up these prototypes and show everyone how these changes are going to impact your current data, as well as start looking at how it impacts your operational and business processes moving forward. So we do have this tool that we will be utilizing. We confirmed the high-level design. Again, we're getting into the details now with the units. And we start socializing the conversion scope. Again, we're going to be looking at converting a lot of this data from our existing structure to the new structure. We know that will be a lot of work. That will be some intensive work required there. We're ready to partner with you. We have tools available for you. We have support available for you, and we will work with you every step of the process as we go through this. So we have held our campus and central chief business officer kickoff meetings for this project. We've engaged our integration partners and third-party vendors. We're now getting into our specific business unit and unit specific meetings for the design reviews. Next slide, please. So where are we going? Complete the stakeholder meetings. As I said, we started with the chief business officers. We are now getting into more specific design meetings with stakeholders from across university. We have already scheduled, I believe, over 150 different meetings to meet with different business units and schools and financial offices across the university. So we can really start looking at the impact at a specific unit level. We understand holistically what the university impact is and the enterprise impact, but we really want to work with every single individual unit out there that will be impacted with this and make sure that we are going through this individually with you, that you are included. So invitations will continue to go out over the coming weeks. Our focus is on department listings. Again, we'll be referring back to the work we did with you all back in 2018 and 19. We'll validate the approach. We'll go through some examples. We'll talk about program and initiative usage, some of the changes we're recommending. We'd like to get your input and work with you on the best way to establish that to better serve you moving forward. We deployed the EDMCS tool for our stakeholders. Again, going through conversion scope, and then we'll move into completing our external and system process impact analysis so we can understand any business process reengineering and further establish our rollout and training programs. And then we'll complete our detailed design and move into implementation. Okay, next, Melissa. So we asked the survey question early on about, do you know where to go get information? I'm going to ask it again. Kat, before you put that up, it's already up, it's okay. There are websites available. coa.rutgers.edu is a specific website for the Chart of Accounts project where you can go get all the latest information and all the updates. You can also visit cornerstone.rutgers.edu. And you can get updates there on all the projects that under the Cornerstone umbrella. We also have a new website that was released a couple months ago for the project management office in UFA, financepmo.rutgers.emu. You can get updates there on all of PMO services, as well as all of our active projects, including Cornerstone, as well as other resources that the PMO can provide for the university. So those are some key websites, and most of our larger projects we are establishing specific websites for as well. So with that said, do you now have a better sense of where to go to get information on current and future projects? And our number jumped from 51% no to 69% yes. So I guess we've done a better job during this meeting, but I do appreciate your responses. I thank you all very much for answering that question. As we said, we are trying to get better on our end to provide you more current and accessible information through websites. You can always reach out to PMO. Our communications team within UFA is also working very closely with us to help us share information. And we're really trying to engage in a better way. So if for any reason, any of you ever feel like you don't know where to go or can't get the best information on projects, please feel free to reach directly out to the PMO office. I'll be happy to assist you. With that said, I will turn it back over to Mr. Gower.
Thank you, John. Appreciate the update. And we will be blanketing communities to know where to go for this information. We have a number of questions that I think between our team here we can address. Stephanie, would you start running through them, please?
Definitely. Since the new lease project is starting and a lot of other system projects are in place, is the Controller's Office and the PMO working on identifying subscription-based information technology arrangements or the right to use another party's software as part of current project processes so that outreach efforts can be leveraged now when GASB 96 is effective for fiscal year 23? Or will there be a separate process later?
Yeah, John, let me try to answer that. I guess I wonder if this is someone who should be on the controller staff thinking that far ahead on the GASB, but for sure, we have our hands full now just identifying, the current leases, both equipment and real estate leases. The software package that John talked about, Lease Administration, Lease Accelerator, will be certainly able to handle these software components when they get there. And as you point out, these are things that will go into effect, a year from now. And hopefully, I think most of these subscription-based arrangements are contained pretty centrally, that we can get our hands around them fairly quickly. But it will be a separate process later.
Thank you, Ernie. The next set of questions are regarding the HCM project. John, is the BPR and are the BPR and HCM implementations going to be done with internal resources, or will there be external resources?
Sure, I can answer that question. We will obviously be engaging with all of our internal stakeholders and constituents, but we have hired an implementation partner who will also work with us on the BPR. And that is with Accenture is the name of the firm we'll be working with. They have extensive experience, not only in HCM implementations, but also in business process reviews from many of our peer universities and other significant institutions across the country. So we have engaged Accenture to work with us, but most of this will be really leveraging our relationships with our internal constituents.
Another question on HCM. Will there be parallel testing before implementing the new system? And how much historical data will be transferred to the new system?
So yes, there will be parallel testing. We will fully test everything in parallel before we move and kick everything over to the new system, especially in regards to items like payroll. So there will be parallel testing. As far as how much data will be converted, we are confirming that right now. We will bring over as much as possible and as much as needed. But as far as an actual date and as far as how much history is coming over, we will confirm that during our design sessions in the next coming months.
History will continue to be available in some
Absolutely.
form.
Anything that's not converted will be available in an archive, and we will make sure it's fully accessible at all times.
And just to double down, we will do extensive parallel testing, including calculation and matching of each and every paycheck through multiple simulated payrolls.
Thank you both. Another question is, who is on the project team? This came in while you were presenting the chart of accounts, but John, maybe you could address it for the 3 projects that you discussed. Who's on the project team, and is there anyone involved from the field that uses the system on a daily basis?
So I'll go to the chart of accounts project specifically. You can go to the chart of accounts website that I just mentioned, coa.rutgers.edu. Our governance committee listings are out there. We'll show you who is currently engaged in our executive committee, our steering committee, our advisory councils, and our project team. Those teams will be beginning to grow, and we will continue to add people to those lists. As far as who is engaged and are there people from the field, yes, there absolutely are. And this is for all projects, not just chart of accounts, but HCM will be the same. We've done it for Lease, we're doing it for student, we're doing it for CRM, all of our large projects and initiatives. These are not committees and project teams strictly focused on central administration offices. We are reaching out to chancellor units. We are reaching out across all the campuses. We're reaching out across all the businesses to ensure that we are actually bringing the end users and the impacted parties into the project team, and they are part of the process throughout the whole way. So these are not teams of quote unquote central folks deciding what to do and pushing it out there to you. We are doing all this in collaboration and partnership across the university. If you have specific questions about your unit's involvement or requests for involvement in any of these projects, please reach out to the PMO. We'd be happy to sit down and speak with you and get you placed on the appropriate committee and team so you can be partners and collaborate with us on these projects. We welcome your involvement.
So thank you, John. There are a number of questions, some of them detailed matter in here, but we are approaching our time limit. We will take every question and provide an answer and post that to the site along with the recording here, and that information will be provided. I do see one here that just can clarify quickly was the rationale for switching from PeopleSoft to Oracle. PeopleSoft is owned by Oracle. The Oracle HCM system is the, if you will, the successor to the PeopleSoft HR payroll system. They've just rebranded it. It's extensively been reworked, but in essence, we're going from one Oracle product to another. With that, I want to thank our panelists today. This is a lot of information, and we'll be posting the recording, the questions, the answers, and they'll be available to you. And we would appreciate it if you can give us feedback. There is in the chat a link to a poll for that. We would appreciate that feedback so that we can make these even more useful for you going forward. Just a reminder, say it again, this will be available on demand. That link is also in the chat. You can find it also by going to finance.rutgers.edu, and you'll see the posting for that. Thanks again to everyone. Stay safe, and look forward to seeing you at the next town hall. Bye now.